What if the United States just left NATO? It sounds like a crazy headline, but it's a question that's been floating around for years. What would actually happen to global security, to Europe, and to America itself if the world's most powerful military alliance suddenly lost its most powerful member? Let's break it down. First, let's understand what NATO is. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization was formed in 1949, right after World War II. Its main goal was to create a collective defense against the Soviet Union. The core principle is Article 5. An attack on one member is an attack on all. For decades, this promise, backed by the immense power of the United States military, kept the peace in Europe. It was a giant "don't even think about it" sign pointed directly at Moscow. So, if the US pulls out, the first and most immediate effect would be a massive security vacuum in Europe. Think about it. The US currently contributes around 70% of NATO's total defense spending. American troops, bases, intelligence, and advanced weaponry form the backbone of the alliance's military capability. Without the US, NATO's ability to deter a major power like Russia would be drastically weakened. European nations would be forced to scramble. They'd have to massively increase their own defense budgets, something many have been reluctant to do for years, relying instead on the American security umbrella. This would mean diverting billions from social programs, infrastructure, and healthcare to build up their armies. Countries like Germany, which has historically maintained a more reserved military posture since World War II, would face immense pressure to rearm on a scale not seen in generations. This could reignite old tensions and historical anxieties within Europe itself. Countries on NATO's eastern flank, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania would feel the most vulnerable. They share borders with Russia and see the American presence as their primary security guarantee. Without it, they might feel compelled to seek other security arrangements. Some could even pursue their own nuclear deterrence, sparking a dangerous new arms race in an already tense region. The entire European security architecture that has been in place for over 70 years would crumble, leading to instability, fear, and a much more dangerous continent. Now, why do some people argue that the US should leave? This brings us to the second part of our topic: why some consider NATO a failure, or at least a bad deal for America. The primary argument is burden sharing. For years, successive US presidents have complained that European allies are not paying their fair share. The official NATO guideline is for each member to spend 2% of its GDP on defense. However, for a long time, only a handful of countries actually met this target. Critics argue that the US is essentially subsidizing the defense of wealthy European nations, allowing them to spend their money on generous social welfare systems while America foots the bill for their security. From this perspective, NATO has become a one-way street, where the US provides the muscle and its allies enjoy the benefits without sharing the costs. The argument is that these are rich, capable countries that should be able to defend themselves. Another point of criticism is that NATO's purpose is outdated. It was created to counter the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. So, why does NATO still exist? And more than that, why has it continued to expand eastward, right up to Russia's borders? Critics argue this expansion has been unnecessarily provocative. From Russia's viewpoint, it looks like a hostile military alliance creeping closer and closer, breaking promises made at the end of the Cold War. They argue that this aggressive posture has backed Russia into a corner, contributing to the very conflicts NATO was supposed to prevent, like the one in Ukraine. Instead of ensuring peace, they say NATO's expansion has fueled a new Cold War. Furthermore, some argue that NATO entangles the United States in conflicts that are not vital to its own national security. Because of Article 5, a border dispute between, say, Lithuania and Russia could theoretically drag the entire United States into a major war, potentially even a nuclear one. The question becomes, is protecting the borders of every member state in Europe worth risking American cities? For some, The answer is a clear no. They advocate for a more America-first foreign policy, where the U.S. only intervenes when its direct interests are at stake, avoiding these entangling alliances. So, let's play this out. If the U.S. leaves, what happens to the U.S.? Proponents of leaving believe America would save billions, even trillions of dollars. This money could be reinvested at home in infrastructure, education, healthcare, or reducing the national debt. The U.S. military could refocus its resources on more pressing threats, perhaps in the Pacific region concerning China, rather than being bogged down in European security. The nation would be free from the obligation to defend dozens of other countries, reducing the risk of being pulled into unnecessary wars. It would be a fundamental shift from being the world's policeman to focusing on its own home. However, the downsides for the U.S. could be just as severe. A destabilized Europe would be bad for the global economy, including America's. Trade and investment would suffer. The U.S. would lose its primary platform for projecting influence and power on the European continent. Without NATO, the U.S. would have to negotiate with each country individually, losing the leverage that comes with leading a powerful bloc. Alliances are a source of strength, and giving up its most important one would leave the U.S. more isolated on the world stage. And here's the irony. A weaker, fragmented Europe might actually create more problems for the U.S. in the long run. If regional conflicts erupt, the U.S. could be pressured to intervene anyway. But without the established framework and allied support that NATO provides, it would be intervening in a mess it helped create. A resurgent and unchecked Russia or a chaotic Europe could ultimately pose a greater threat to U.S. interests than the costs of maintaining the alliance. So you have two very different visions of the future. One where the U.S. withdraws, forcing Europe to stand on its own feet, potentially leading to a stronger, more self-reliant Europe, or a fragmented, conflict-ridden one. And another where the U.S. remains, continuing to grumble about burden sharing, but ultimately maintaining the stability that has defined the post-war era. In conclusion, the debate over the U.S. role in NATO is really a debate about America's role in the world. Is it the indispensable nation, the leader of the free world with a responsibility to uphold global order? Or is it time for the U.S. to pull back, focus on its own problems, and let other countries manage their own affairs? Leaving NATO would be one of the most significant geopolitical events of the 21st century. It would save America money and reduce some foreign entanglements. But it would also risk plunging Europe into instability, creating new security threats, and diminishing American influence globally. The alliance is far from perfect, and the criticisms about cost and purpose are valid points for debate. But dismantling a 75-year-old security structure is a move with enormous, unpredictable consequences. The question isn't just whether NATO is a failure, but whether a world without it would be any better. What do you think? Is NATO an outdated relic or a vital shield? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you found this breakdown interesting, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into global affairs. See you next time.